excited about coastal landscapes, you are in the right room. Welcome. My name is Pinki Mondal, and I am an associate professor at the University of Delaware. And I am very pleased to welcome you all to our session. We have 4 talks today, and we just learned 2 of them are flash talks. So the other 2 talks, Sandy and I will get to use all the time we have. So please bear with us. I'll be the first speaker in this session today, and most of the material that I'm presenting today is my PhD students' work who didn't get to come here in Mexico because they went to Hawaii. So I get to come here in Mexico and spend this time with you all and share most of his research with you all. But I'd also like to take a little bit of time to think about a few different themes that we have been hearing through this conference so far. So when you think about coastal landscapes, what comes to your mind? Beach, mangroves. I'm not going to talk about either today. So what I'm going to talk about today is this landscape. It's a very beautiful landscape in the northeastern part of the USA, and I'm going to talk about what it looks like, but you get to get a little bit of idea what the coastal landscape that I'm going to talk about today looks like from a satellite point of view. So as you can see, there's open ocean, and then you have marshland, and you do have a lot of agricultural lands, mostly soybean and corn. And as you know, this session is about coastal landscapes in transition, and I'm going to talk about some of the challenges and potential solutions, and I highlight potential about this landscape. So the challenge I'm going to talk about is known as saltwater intrusion, or as we call SWI. Now, saltwater intrusion was known, well, fondly called, I don't know whether fondly, but used to be called invisible flood because it was mostly invisible. So it was primarily driven by this inland movement of salt water from ocean to land through the groundwater reservoir. So you have this ocean water edge that is constantly pushing on the freshwater reserves, and as we go through different processes, sea level rise, land subsidence, different management strategies, you have this increasing reach of salt water into the groundwater reservoir. Now, one mechanism was that plant will take that water up, and that salt stress will kill them eventually. But what was going on in this northeastern part of the USA more and more recently was that we are also experiencing this excessive salt stress from surface water because it's a very low-lying land. A lot of this coastal land is very close to high tide line, so we get to have a lot of flooding. And as we know, we are going through a very challenging time climate change wise. So we are also experiencing a lot of powerful coastal storms that are bringing this salt water onto these coastal lands. And the way this land is managed, that it's working land. In the USA, we call this working, as in the land is working for people. It's a bit weird, but we do have a lot of canals and ditches so that the excess water used to be sent away from the coastal land into the ocean water, like open ocean. But these days, with this powerful coastal storms, we are bringing in this excess water onto the farmlands. So now the most dominant mechanism is not through groundwater anymore. I like to see it as a 2-pronged mechanism. So something is happening from top down and some is happening from bottom up. Depending on what kind of vegetation you have, that might be a very different, there can be so many different mechanisms or manifestations. How many of you have heard of ghost forest? So this is a process where big trees, they have this salty water, they take this up, but that kills them, that burns them out, inside out. It's a very painful death. So after a while, the tree is dead. You only have these dead stems standing, and it's dead, right? So that's why it's called ghost forest. and expansive areas. If you go visit these landscapes, you'll be able to see it. It's one of the most dramatic manifestations of saltwater intrusion. However, what I'm going to talk about today is the other portion of land use, the agricultural land. But I wanted you to focus on this study area. Here, we are focusing on Delaware, where I'm situated. Only 3 counties there, very small state. We have 9 counties in Maryland, and we have 2 in Virginia. So these are the coastal areas. Together, they are called Delmarva Peninsula. So Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. We focused on that because at one side we have Delaware Bay, the other side we have Chesapeake Bay. So it's very close to open water and salt water. As you can see in the middle, all these agricultural land are very close to this salt water, so they're experiencing this over and over. What I'm going to talk about today is not ghost forest, but agricultural lands where we do see some subtle visuals. I say subtle because when you compare that with ghost forest, it seems subtle. But if you actually visit this land, it's not so much in certain regions. So for example, if you visit one of the first the first one from left, that's salt patch, visible salt patch. When I show some of these pictures to people, they don't always realize it. They say, oh, it's sand, or it's, some dried up area. These are salt because we have collected soil samples and we have tested it. They're highly, highly saline. When you walk over this land, it almost feels like you are walking over broken glass. So it's very, very, very salty. Now, the salt patches, they don't have any plant. Nothing can grow there. But interesting thing is, not the entire farm is turned into salt patch. What you also get to see is unhealthy vegetation, what means stunted crop growth. So where the salinity is not so high and people are still planting crops, those crops are not doing great depending on the salinity level. And you do see stunted corn, stunted soybean. Corn particularly does not like salty water or salty soil at all. Soybean does a little better, but not as much as we would like to get the full potential out of this working land. But this is what would be a typical saline field look like. The other component of it would be the encroachment of marsh species. We see encroachment, we call it an encroachment, and that is something it's debatable. But because some of these marsh species, they do really love salt. And when the regular crop, traditional food crop, cannot sustain in that environment, we do see marsh species growing up and taking over that land. So much so that some of the farmers have reported Phragmites, which is an invasive species. Well, one type of Phragmites is an invasive species, and that loves salt, and that's growing in the middle of the farm. So we are seeing this more and more. Before, even though it was saline, maybe it was not at that level. So when we used to talk to them, they will be like, my farm is fine, we don't need to do anything. And now they're coming to us saying, hey, now we see Phragmites growing in the middle of the farm, and they obviously do not like it for the right reasons. So we do see a lot of this changes going from crop to bare to marsh species. The question is it necessarily bad? Depends on how you look at it. When we first started this work, farmers or landowners, they did not always believe that it was happening. Oftentimes, if it's not happening in my household or in my neighborhood, it's not happening at all. So initially we were there. We started this work because some landowners, some farmers were experiencing this, and they wanted us to work on this. And that's how it got started. So when I first started this work, we were working on how do we, it's a weird title, my student said, catch the salt patch. How do we catch it? Because the salt patches are not uniform. A farm is easier to pick up with satellite images, drone images. The salt patches are not. What you see on the top, the left one, the white ones, those are the salt patches. And those are one of the good, and good within quotes, salt patches, because you can pick that up. It's easier to pick or capture. Not all salt patches are like that. You have very, they don't have a uniform shape or size. So initially we started with drone data, but obviously, you cannot fly drone everywhere. You need permits. So with the farm owner's permission, we, collected some drone data. Then I used that to train data from my NAIP, which is National Aerial Imagery Program. It's a program run by United States Department of Agriculture. It's basically they fly an aeroplane with a camera and they take picture, high resolution data. However, that data, while detailed, 1 meter resolution, they're not available all the time, right? It's every 2 to 3 years because it takes time and money to fly that plane. So initially we started there and we developed data sets from 2011 and 2016 just to get us started. And I'll show you some of those results. But we also realized that those salt patches are elusive, meaning if you have a good rainfall event, that will wash the salt away. So you won't be able to pick that up next time you are trying this. However, the farm is still saline. So the problem remains. So when we started thinking about how to incorporate satellite imaging into that, we thought of, whatever we have. And this is not a unique problem for northeastern USA. We have been seeing this for a very long time in Bangladesh, in Vietnam, in other places. So I wanted to develop a method that can be reproducible in other places, other countries with open access data. So that was my motivation for using Sentinel. The issue was what we call mixed pixel, which means within one pixel or grid cell, you have many different types of land covers or land uses. So because we were talking about very fine scale patterns, we have salt patch, we have bare soil, we have crops, those unhealthy vegetation, we have everything. So how do we get the exact signature out of it? So that took us a little bit of time, but ultimately we managed to get something out of it. How good that is, only time will tell. We are working on this. But we used machine learning approaches to get us to 1% out of those 10-meter pixel. So what it does, this method using Sentinel-1 will output a data that will have percent for salt patch, marsh, and other dominant land covers. We focused on only 5 because those were the dominant one here, and output will be this. And we checked with our field level data that we collected. We checked with high resolution. It obviously always could be much, much better, but it's something to start with. And then we utilize that to look at how these patches or marshland is changing over time. If you remember those field photos, you can remember that there are some places where there are only a few plants there. So we are trying to pick this up because farmers need to know or want to know how this is going to take over their farm or how long they have before they have to do something. The first graph that you are seeing, that's a salt patch area. The first 2 numbers are from our first study where we use the aerial data, not the satellite data. And only looking at those 2, the numbers look small. That's about 5 square kilometer to 9 square kilometer. But remember that when you have those kind of salt patches on a farm, that means rest of the farm is already very saline. And that's the reason we are looking at marshland too. But then using this kind of extension, annual data, we are seeing a rise, a very concerning rise in salt patch. If you look at the marsh area, it's not that much. It looks like this. There's some ups and downs. But if you look at the numbers, that's not much. And I'm speculating right now because we are still looking at it. A lot of marshland we are losing to open water. So that's kind of balancing it out. But more than that, rather than the absolute number, what I was more interested into looking at the patterns on the farms. So what you are seeing here, only three years, 2020, 2021, and 2022. What I would like you to focus on the green and brown. So the green ones are, about less than 50% of that pixel was marsh. Brown ones are over 75%. If you focus here, there's no marsh here back in 2020. By 2022, there's kind of a nucleus that was formed. And then by 22, it was growing into pretty much like heavy marshland. And this marshland, depending on where you are, could be many different types of species. We have a combination of different marsh species. So this is something that our landowners, our farmers wanted to know. But then these are the challenges. Where are some of the opportunities? We started to look at the different farms, and it became quite clear it really depends on geography. Because, salinization comes in different stages. Some farms can go from 0 to 5, 5 being very saline, after 1 or 2 events. And some farms will go through 0 through 5 in many years. So we wanted to know what are some of the driving mechanisms that's happening, because there's so many. It's a very complex process here that's happening. So we are looking at that now. But that's not important. The most important part, that's not on the slide, is something that I would like to discuss with the landowners and the farmers and everyone else who care about this landscape, is what we do with this. See, the northeastern part of the USA, that landscape, they don't have one type of landowners. They have many different types, and they have different desirable future outcomes. As we are talking about probable future, desirable future, they have a variety of those. So my colleagues and I co-organized a conference this past summer and brought them in. We have been working with them throughout the years, but we just got them in the room and said, hey, this is what we are seeing. What do you think could be a desirable outcome, and where are some of those levers are? Because, money speaks. We have learned that already. And some of the programs that exist on the ground that give them incentive to convert those lands that are already converting into marshland, to act proactively, and rather than working against nature, working with nature and convert them into marshland, that can be used as wildlife habitat, that can be saved for future generations. So that's a thought. A lot of farmers said, I don't want marshland on my working land. I want it to stay active in production, right? So that's resisting. Some people were like, I want some of it to get converted, but I'd like to preserve some. And I would also like to, use some of the other mechanisms that I have if I know the options. So that's adapting. And some people, mostly smallholder farmers, indigenous group, they're smallholders. And once their land is taken up by nature, they don't have anything else other than to retreat. So these are the 3 things that I see as a potential future. Whether that's desirable or not, we don't know that yet. So that is something I'm hoping to find out next. And with that, I'd like to take any questions that you might have. Thank you.
I have a question about the crop cover. Does that make a difference? Does it go faster or slower?
That's a great question. It depends on where you are and what the farmers want. Cover crop has been used kind of mostly for soil erosion, not so much for this. We have tried a few different things, a few different salt tolerant crop types. Believe it or not, for all the trial areas, sometimes it just didn't work out. Sometimes the deer ate it all. Sometimes the birds ate it. So we are still trying to figure out, but we know a few crop types that work, like sorghum, barley, asparagus. The problem that we found out coming from the farmers or landowners, that there's not a market. So they would only go for an option if there's a market for it. But at the same time, we have seen these community organizations or Eastern Shore Land Conservancy, Lower Shore Land Trust, they work to increase conservation. They will reach out to the farmers, and they're what we call absentee landowners. So they don't live there. They don't really have a connection with the land, and most of the time they cannot reach out to them. So they would like to take that land and not take as in buy, but lease it, work with nature and use it for conservation. And there's program for that, like easement programs, but it seems like farmers are not very aware of that. What I think we can do is to create a whole suite of options for them, depending on what they think is desirable. Because we also heard from one farmer, and he said, why aren't you just putting up a wall? So you see, there's a a wide range of acceptable or desirable outcomes they want, and I think our community needs to work with them more to find out what's feasible, what's sustainable, and what's desirable. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I used to work in Delaware Bay, but restoration on one side and also oyster farming. I guess for people that still didn't work the land, and I don't know about the Delaware side, but in the New Jersey side, you historically had salt hay and these different, like actually farming the marsh crops.
Mm-hmm.
Does that come up at all? I remember seeing years ago a presentation on like Costa Ezechia, the hibiscus, and there wasn't a market for it. I mean, salt hay, there's a reason why people don't. There's 2 farms left.
It really depends on where you are. I have very different experiences working in Maryland versus Delaware. In Delaware, especially where the rural area is, like southern part of Delaware, that's a very different landscape. They still want their corn, let's put it that way. Also interesting thing is the corn that's grown there, it's not for human consumption, it's for chicken feed. So there's a huge lobby from the chicken producer of that company, so private sector and industry. There's a lot of different actors that are at work here. So there's not an easy answer to that. Okay, thank you so much for your attention. I'd like to welcome our next speaker, Sandy Nofianza.
Hello. Hello, everybody. My name is Andy. I'm from University of Manchester. I'm doing a PhD, and this is part of my first chapter. I'm inviting you to see Indonesian mangrove now. So, yeah, I'm looking at how I'm looking at 2 policies, which is social forestry and marine protected areas, and how are they impacting poverty reduction effort, and how do they help in mangrove conservation. So I will tell you a bit about Indonesian mangrove, the challenges that they are facing, about the policy briefly, gaps, objective questions, and how do I reach to this point at the moment with the preliminary results. And I do hope I get some input from you if that may be relevant. So mangrove forest is a unique ecosystems, and most of them are located in Indonesia. They store carbon more than terrestrial forests. They have the ability to do that. They are also super important in terms of for fish production. Indonesian fish production is worth about 1.5 billion US dollars, and they are also the aquaculture industry is depend highly upon on mangrove ecosystems. And of course, you know that mangrove ecosystem is important for both human livelihoods, human welfare, and also animals, flora and fauna that live in that ecosystem. So one of the most pressing challenge for mangrove is the conversion for aquaculture and for human settlements. And see here the aquaculture boom happened during early 2000s and still happening until now. And the government is accelerating the effort to restore mangroves, more recently in the previous presidency. But yeah, it's still very new. And there are so many hands governing mangroves. There are Ministry of Environment and Forestry. There's Ministry of Marine and Fisheries. And there's also Ministry of Spatial Planning. They are governing mangroves outside of forest area. So we have this formal arrangement where there's forest area and non-forest area, but for non-forest area can also be forested in practice, in reality. And there are organizations who, government organizations, agencies who are in charge of restoration, which is the Mangrove and Peatland Restoration Agency. Now it's about the policy. We have this social forestry. There are five initiatives in it. So one of which is village forest, community forest, community plantation, indigenous forest, and partnership forest. So basically, they are doing practically anything that they can do. It can be non-timber forest product collection. For community forest, there are new mandate to also perform restorations. And for community plantation, they are basically working together with they are supplying timber for nearby mills. Indigenous forest is a bit different because they don't have limitations. So once the land is classified as indigenous, it stays indigenous for that community. And partnership is, they have this specific partnership with specific companies. And then there are also different types of marine protected areas based on their use. It can be for some of the area for marine protected can be used for small scale production for local fishermen. And yeah, then there are also areas that are strictly protected. Now, both policies are being championed to be, to produce win-win conservation and poverty reduction outcome, which is important because research shows that there are lots of rural, poor people living in rural areas and within the proximity of forests. And without proper consideration towards their well-being, there's risk these well-intended policies can harm them. So we are testing if that's the case. Now, most of the study now are either focusing on one driver or one policies. In here, I want to try to bring together many different policies that are located in mangroves and see how they are performing in reducing poverty and also increasing mangrove forest cover. And I try to control so many different variables that might be relevant. So yeah, I'm asking what are the relative or individual effects of either policies and both towards mangrove conservation and poverty alleviation. So I'm using the quasi-experimental approaches. I'm only focusing on the data is from 2000 until 2020. I'm focusing on MPA and social forestries established between 2010 and 2020. So there are three different models basically. One with villages with only social forestry, another is villages with only MPA, and the third is village with both of them. And I'm comparing each of them with villages that are never treated. Yeah, and in the case of village with concurrent implementation between the two, I chose the later implementation. So for example, if social forestry is implemented in 2010 and marine protected area is in 2012, then I assume the starting date of both are 2012. So I'm combining environment mangrove forest cover data from map biomass Indonesia, which is really good because we don't have like publicly available annual data for mangrove cover. and this is particularly important because now Indonesia is the only way that have map biomass outside of Latin America. And then for the poverty data, I'm using data from the statistic agency called PODES. So PODES data is established, is released between in every 3 years. Now I'm using 6 waves, but I will use 8 waves in the future. So the data is between 2000 and 2021. Yeah, and the data is from the socioforestry and MPA is from the ministry. The unit of analysis is village with mangrove ecosystem. So PODES is village potential. Imagine the data is like a household survey where you have this condition of health, education, and everything, but this is on the village level. So, for example, distance to nearest primary school, or whether or not they have health facilities, that kind of things. So I use a multi-dimensional poverty index to measure the poverty reduction. This is indicators created by the government. Yeah, and it mimics the multi-dimensional indicators used by Oxford Poverty and OPHI. Yeah, I don't remember the. Now, this is the landscape. So the blue one is the marine protected areas, and the red one is protected areas terrestrial. Okay, and there are 3,500 social forestry scattered around Indonesia. And yeah, this is, sorry about the, so this is a simplified view of them. So of course, mangroves located in the basically coastlines, and there are almost 900 villages with only MPA, and 700 with only social forestry, and 124 with both MPA. I'm comparing them with 6,000 villages. This is some of the variables that I control in this exercise. So ranging from different biophysical and the socioeconomic indicators, and also whether or not the villages are they have terrestrial protected areas. Why I control them here? Because some of them do have terrestrial PA, but those are established long ago, like in the 70s, in the 80s. Now, on mangrove cover, the changes in mangrove cover over time cannot be attributed to either SF or MPA when you see them separately. And on the poverty reduction, there's also unclear at this point. Yeah. But when they are seen together, when they are implemented together, we've seen some interesting finding. They are significant after first year of implementation in terms of mangrove forest cover gain, but the result I'm not entirely convinced of this result at this point because of the high confidence interval. And when I see the trend, it looks like some of the area with both implementation is already having this good mangrove forest cover forest cover in the first place. Yeah. Other than that, for the poverty reduction, it's not really. There's no good pattern as of this point. Now, this is some of homework that I imagine I have to do. Now, the control villages may contain area underwent mangrove restoration. I need to think about that. Maybe I need to remove some of the, some of the provinces, and maybe I need to focus only on one social forestry schemes, which is maybe village forest or community forest, because they are the two that can be found most in mangrove villages. Now I will also use different MPI indicators just to check the robustness of my results. They basically, this one is based on the work of Alkir and Foster. Yeah, this is still ongoing, but there are 3 dimensions: education, health, and living standards. Now I will also try to incorporate more independent variables like rainfall, coastline change, and distance from mangrove to populated place. And if you guys have any suggestion, please do let me know. And with that, I'm part of this group in Manchester called Sustainable Forest Transition. Check out the work that we do here, and if you are interested, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, super interesting and exciting. The thing that I would imagine you've spent time thinking about already is this: you have this tiny sample of both social forestry, both MPA villages, and a possible sort of selection problem that's giving you the result that you find. So knowing that some of these villages have been social forestry MPA for some time, what do you know as you think about your matching criteria? What are the sort of selection criteria? Either, I don't know anything about how they became social forestry MPA. What do you know about how they were selected in?
So if I understand your question correctly, how do villages implement, how do social forestry implemented in one village? Is that?
So your challenge with a quasi-experimental design is finding appropriate matches, right?
Yeah.
And you've identified this really interesting effect that when you find these two things together, there's this huge difference relative to other things. But what is it that led those villages to be both social forestry and MPA? Were they selected? Did they select in? What are the characteristics that you know that led them to be both? And are you able to match on those characteristics in the control?
Right. So at the moment, I only use social forestry are located in terrestrial, but now I'm considering mangrove village with both policies if marine protected areas are located adjacent to marine protected areas. So that's the consideration now of determining which villages that have both marine protected and social forestry. And in terms of matching, that's still I have to be honest, I still have problems with the matchings because I don't think it's quite robust enough at this point. And I would love to talk to you more about that if you have any ideas. And at this point, I just match on those, and including the outcome variables. So the matching returns not too many results, too many, match villages. So I need to think a little bit more about how do I get, better apple to apple kind of match. So yeah, thank you.
Do you have any other questions for Sandy?
Yeah, with this aquaculture expansion, I assume it's mostly shrimp farms.
I'm sorry?
I assume it's mostly shrimp farms.
Shrimp farms, yes.
Yeah. Are they
The
still,
1.5 billion is shrimp.
And is that still expanding? Like, is that still, or is that like kind of reaching a plateau now?
So with the new administrations just recently in office, they are still still planning to expand, add more. They are still saying that we have so many areas that can be productive and everything. So yeah, the threat of aquaculture conversion still pretty much high at this point. Yeah.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.
Let's now move on with our last speaker, Janice Alvarado.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining this session. I changed a little bit to the topic, but I'm going to do. This is my project for doctoral project in UNAM. It's titled Barriers and Bridges for Community-Based Water Management. So, I would like to start to talk about water access in Mexico. So, for territorially, water access is a disparity between south and south, north and south. You can see these two maps, and the southeast is the first map is the precipitation rates. Mainly in southeast, Oaxaca and Chiapas present high precipitations, a difference to the north. And the other map is marginalization grade in Mexico. So you can see that the map where the water is available for the people, where they don't have enough pipe water and also basic services. So measuring water in terms of pipe water inside home is not measuring infrastructure. Is measure only infrastructure, nor access continuously sufficient and a good quality for affordable. So this study was carried on in Rio Grande, Comitán, Chiapas. It's a basin located in the border with Guatemala country. And these people don't have water services. So this is a basin inside the Grijalvo-Sumacinta region, which is the one important region in the country. This is a karst geology, rain-fed agriculture and irrigation for practices with the people. There are tourist activities mainly in the National Park Lagunas de Montebello. This is the most deepest lakes in the country also. So this is a Ramsar site and birds area importance for UNESCO. But the eutrophication process in 2003 to start to change the color of the lakes. So we can see this heat map donde we subdive this subbasin in this watershed in subbasins. So we can see lacustrine plain system. We can most change 2006 and 2010 in the most changed forest lost for this subbasin, but it's according to these photographs. In 2003 and 2014, we can see a change, a lot of water quality in these lakes, and mainly for eutrophication processes, sediment transportation, etc. So, according to this context, we plan to research questions. What is the socioeconomic context in which community-based water management take place in the Rio Grande Comitán watershed? And what will be the main barriers and bridges to access to water in these rural communities? So, community-based management was when rural community has been the most affected in terms of the water management, distribution, and sanitation. Community management is the way in which population take on the task of the managing water and sanitation system through the neighborhood or community organization. Particularly in Mexico, the unequal distribution of water has had consequences people health and development. Sorry. So for this analysis, we applied mixed method approach. We applied semi-structured interviews with women and who mainly manage water in their houses. Also, we applied water quality analysis in the supply sources in the houses and also in the lakes, rivers, and dams. We did a focus group also for through participatory mapping to facilitate group and interview with both women and men to include users and managers. So, okay. With the first results were water quality and management practices. We identified very similarities between where water is inside or pipe water inside the house, but it differs water quality when the rainwater is harvesting and also water fetching. It means with water fetching is more related with turbidity, bacteria like E. coli and coliforms, and where the people has water inside the house, the water is better with more like chlorine or maybe conductivity factors. No? This is another results from this mixed methods approach. We identified bridges and barriers to scales, collective and individual. So this kind of infographic to help us to communicate to the people some results in the communities. For example, there are reforestation campaigns, forestal community management for forests, wash water hands, some facilities, but also there are other activities that don't impede the water access to the people. Maybe a lack of monitoring water quality, lack of services, medical services in the community, and other things. But this is important to notice that the water people, the water in these communities is the main cost of their livelihoods for these people. So, like a conclusions, community has a significant potential to influence change and represent a crucial part of the development and orientation of social and economic systems towards sustainability, social justice, and equity. Evaluating challenges as an opportunity is essential to move towards sustainable pathways. The infrastructure is the main barrier to accessing an adequate amount of water, and water quality is one of the main goals to guarantee community health. Water fetching represents a greater impact for women and children, and the main barrier to water quality and quantity in these communities. And of course, climate change represents challenges for water management and governance for all scales and in these communities. So it was a brief summary for a project published in 2022. So thank you so much. It's a little bit different topic, but thank you for listening.
Questions for Dr. Alvarado?
Thank you.
May I ask you a quick question? So you talked about water quality and how communities are dealing with it. Do you see any unique challenges in terms of coastal landscapes? Because, the coastal water, I see that as a special water, right? Do you see any unique challenges that people or communities in coastal landscape, they're living very close to the coastline in terms of your research?
About water quality?
Yes.
Well, I think the water quality in these landscapes is a good quality. You can see the image from the lakes are very beautiful landscapes with a better, really good quality water, but the main challenge for the people is to storage the water in their houses, because the time of the storage is inside of the house, or when the people have to travel with the water in the community is when the water quality change a little bit too, because the people doesn't have sometimes good practices to hygiene with the animals in the water storage also. So I think it's a very particular management practices in their houses when the water quality changes in some cases. Yes.
Do you have any other questions? I have another question for Dr. Lee. I'm sorry because I wanted to ask you then, but I wanted to give that time to Dr. Alvarado. I really like your graph where you had these green circles and the other ones. Can you elaborate on, because we are trying to find solutions if these are problems, right? We are defining the problems and we are trying to find the solutions. Do you see a way to make it happen on the ground? How you get the countries to adopt what you're proposing as a solution or as another way to look at it?
Okay, good question. We are economists, we are kind of living the world of theory. But I think here at this conference, there are many policy people, and also I think also from the community and also the practitioners. I think for these mangrove carbon projects to be materialized, to be really realized for their full potential of carbon sequestration, there are many more efforts. And currently, the voluntary carbon markets is not yet established so well. So that's why I'm proposing this, alternative metrics to just to give some kind of indication for the climate finance to flowing towards this developing countries' mangrove forests. But I think. Climate finance would be a much better way or faster way than, compared to the voluntary carbon markets development. It takes time, and also the adoption of this, the adoption or participation in this voluntary carbon markets by these developing countries. I think maybe they will progress relatively slower. So the global climate finance should quickly enter into this area. And of course, the other local efforts are also very important. But these solutions always takes time. But for climate change, we cannot wait, because now we already starting to feel a lot of very bad influence. Like this year in Taipei, we don't have so many typhoons this year in Taiwan, but whenever it hits Taiwan, it's very serious. So we have in October for my class, I got 2 weeks, 2 days lectures off. Yeah, because of the typhoon off holidays. Not holidays. It's one of our adaptation way to this climate impacts. Yeah, and that's economic loss, right? So whatever the natural resources in the developing country can help us, mitigate this global warming. I think the world should encourage it, and with financial support to these mangrove carbon projects. And that would be my response to your question. Yeah.
Do you have any last minute question? Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks very much for your time today and your attention. We really appreciate it, and hope you have a rest good of the conference.